So we're really, really close to the end of the day, but I think Facebook is coming, so there's a good reason to stick around. But even, I hope, for this session, we'll try to make it fun and interesting. I will do my best to get out of the way as much as possible. We actually have three very fascinating speakers up here. We were just having a great conversation in the green room before we started. Basically, what we want to talk about today is consumer sentiment as it relates, at least in a few different ways, to the world of local search and online to offline commerce. And I can begin a little bit by introducing myself, my own background, and I think some shared assumptions that I have with some people in the room. In fact, I would hearken to comments that were made earlier this afternoon by Monica from Sochi. She did a good job of laying out kind of the basic story of reputation management, social listening, as it exists in the local space, as many of us talk to SMBs and brands about it and have tools and services that help brands to manage their reputations. Often we're talking about the same channels over and over again, Google and Yelp and Facebook, and we're talking about consumer reviews and star ratings and the text of the review and how you have to engage with consumers on those channels according to certain best practices, how that's going to help you to do business better, how it's going to help you to turn complainers into fans and understand things from an operational perspective. All of that stuff is true, and in fact it's evolving on its own interesting trajectory these days. Mike Blumenthal was talking earlier today about Google Questions and Answers, which is a whole new world of consumer feedback that brands now and SMBs now have to start paying attention to. Another trend that's really interesting for us is people are communicating more through photos now than they are through text, or at least some people are, to the point where many of the Google reviews we see have very little text, and then the photo is supposed to kind of tell the story about how the consumer feels about that brand. And so we feel like we need to constantly evolve and pay attention to how consumers are communicating with businesses and help brands to really understand that well. But as I talk to the people that we're going to be speaking with in a second here, I realized that we within local search look at reputation with blinders on in a certain way. Again, same kinds of activities, same kinds of channels. This tends to be the conversation that we have over and over again. And each of these three gentlemen look at the same types of problems from a very different perspective. So by way of introduction, I'm going to ask each of them to explain a little bit about what consumer sentiment means for them, what it means for their business. And I guess I'll start with Jason from UPS. And one of the things in our conversations before the panel that I felt was interesting was that for you, ratings and reviews, you know that they exist, they're out there, but they're actually maybe not the primary thing that UPS focuses on when it comes to improving the customer experience. So maybe you can introduce yourself, Jason, and then speak to that question a little bit.
Yes. So Jason Robinson with UPS here in the tri-state area is where I cover as Director of Marketing. I've been with UPS for 27 years, started in Phoenix, Arizona, and ended up over here in New York City in the last 4 years. So it's been very exciting. But yeah, so consumer sentiment from our perspective is really kind of multi-fold, right? We've got to consider it from the UPS perspective, but we also got to consider it from the businesses that we serve and our customers, which are typically B2B or business customers, and then ultimately we're delivering to the end consumer given the rising increase in e-commerce business. So yeah, the funny part there is, and what we were talking about in the back, is that we typically try to be the middleman in between the business and the consumer, and end up trying to be as invisible as possible and create as much of a seamless process in making sure that the package and the information from a technology standpoint and a visibility standpoint are exactly where it needs to be, so that it's completely frictionless and the consumer ends up getting the package and getting their product exactly as if they would have went directly to the business and we weren't even involved. And then part of that, one of the things that we brought up was, I had mentioned to Damian that our founder back in 1907, one of the reasons we chose brown as our color was because we were delivering to a lot of the large retail stores back in that time. And we wanted to stay hidden in the background, and we didn't want to be flashy, so we chose the brown color to make sure that we did not stand out in that environment.
So I found that very interesting because it's a lesson to me. The way I kind of read the story that you're telling is that as a company that tries to sell reputation management services to brands, we have to always remember not to treat every brand as having the same kinds of problems. And UPS versus a restaurant or a hotel, yes, of course you care about how consumers are reviewing you on Google, but the way to approach that may not be to encourage people to have a great experience at the UPS store, because nobody wants that, right? They want you to get out of the way, deliver the package, and be gone. And that brown color is supposed to kind of convey that we fade into the background and just do the work for you. And so for you guys, improving the way consumers feel about you is all about logistics. It's all about easing or reducing friction in the path to delivery, and maybe providing services like you guys now have a map that helps people see where the truck is on its way to delivering your package. But it's all in the interest of getting out of the way as soon as possible, which to me is a very different way of looking at sentiment. So the complete opposite end of the spectrum is Mark's world, which is the world of well, when we say TripAdvisor, usually we think of hotels, right? But TripAdvisor has exploded in the restaurant space. I think you told me you guys have 4.5 million restaurants globally.
That's crazy.
And so now this is a huge thing. I know our brands are all about TripAdvisor these days, the restaurant brands. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and also how TripAdvisor came to become a restaurant review site that's kind of taking over the planet.
Yeah, so Mark Goliboy, head of marketing for TripAdvisor Restaurants. So it was interesting, we're talking about consumer sentiment. TripAdvisor is built on consumer sentiment, right? We have been, since around 2000, gathering reviews. We have 600 million reviews and related pieces of content on our site. And thinking about logistics and kind of staying in the background, we're the exact opposite. We want people to find us, we want people to read that consumer sentiment and choose their next dining destination or travel destination based on it. So when I think about how TripAdvisor fits into this space, it's how do we stay credible? How do we make sure that when people look at a TripAdvisor review of a restaurant, that they're going to find that that's representative of the experience. When we survey people, we find that about 93% of the diners who use TripAdvisor would find the dining experience to be represented by the reviews they've read. So we need to maintain that and make sure that we are an exceptional place from a consumer perspective. Then how do we start to talk to B2B? We've been gathering reviews since 2004, but we've only had B2B product for about the last 2 years. So we've only been selling to restaurants, it's actually a little less than that, about 18 months. So we are now selling advertising and branding products, and our big challenge is that people think of us as this huge travel site and that it's only a tourism site, where we know that 64% of our consumers are researching dining on mobile, and that much of that is local to local. So the reason why we're here and telling this story is we want agencies and brands to know that there is an audience available to you that you haven't necessarily thought of on TripAdvisor restaurants. And as we're telling that story, we're finding huge success in having people come to us and just buy from us on e-commerce. So now it's making people aware of that, and in time for them to know that their competitors are going to be doing this, whether that's agencies or other restaurants.
Mark, you're saying that you guys can tell that many of your users are actually local and not travelers because of the percentage of mobile users? Right. That's your proxy for that?
We're doing more research on it. We really want to be able to separate it out. When you sign up for TripAdvisor, we don't ask where you live, right? We want you to use the site in the most frictionless way possible. So we use machine learning then to say, this person always travels from Boston to their travel destination. They're probably Boston. And as that gets more and more accurate, we start to assign that person as Boston. Well, then we can really say that person is dining in Massachusetts. They are local to local dining right now. So we're working on that right now. We have all the data to do it. It's just a new question that we're asking.
I mean, beneath the surface, and we talked about this a little bit before, if you go to TripAdvisor today, I'm sure you've seen this, There's hotels, that's kind of the first thing you see. Then there's restaurants. There's a ton of restaurant content out there today. And obviously people are using it in ways that even maybe surprised you guys when you started to take a look at the trends. And then you have this other category called attractions, which also has hundreds of businesses and hundreds of reviews, and many of them, it's surprising how many people are talking about those kinds of experiences on TripAdvisor. Attractions being anything that you might want to visit when you come to New York, or any place you might be traveling to, or maybe you're even a local resident who's using TripAdvisor for that purpose. It seems like you're almost pivoting into a local search site. Is that, you see you guys yourselves doing that, or are you going to stay focused on travel?
So part of why everyone here knows TripAdvisor is because of our ability to do SEO really, really well,
Yep.
right? So I was showing someone earlier, because we were talking about why people would use TripAdvisor when Google has everything, and I Googled steakhouses in Brooklyn, and TripAdvisor was the first link to come up.
Right.
That was I didn't prepare for that. I knew that it was going to be in the top 5, because we're always in the top 5 when you look for a category in a geo. That's all just SEO. So our attraction side of the business is taking advantage of some of that same ability to be found, right? And then some of the credibility that we've built with our good reviews on TripAdvisor, that people are now starting to book their day tours on TripAdvisor, and we're starting to think about the entire travel experience, from early research of where should I go, through hotel and flight, which you're going to do months before you start to plan your tours and restaurants, through tours and restaurants, and then ultimately while you're in, the kind of next generation might include things like shopping, where people are going to these places expecting to
Right.
walk down a shopping district street and buy stuff, and
Right.
there's all of that opportunity as well.
We have a lot of brands asking, should we care about how we're being listed and reviewed on TripAdvisor now, where that
Yes.
question a year or so ago did not come up. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we have one more story to kind of introduce into the conversation, then we're going to see how we can sort of mutually thread them together. I'm interested in just asking the room, how many people have heard of HappyOrNot? You don't count. Okay, 1, 2. That's it. Interesting. I had not heard of them either until a few months ago. An article which I totally recommend came out in the New Yorker, which is about this company founded in Finland by our friend Heikki over here. And what they do is right in the center of this conversation, and yet it comes at it from a perspective that is something I don't think anybody else had thought of before then, and they still occupy kind of a unique space, a unique position all their own. And so I will let Heikki explain.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Heikki from HappyOrNot, and the service what we are providing for companies is kind of like the hardware-based service, where this is the terminal with this kind of like 4 smiley buttons, and then there is like a question sign. So you may have seen our service, for example, at the airports. For example, like airports here in New York are using our service. Like we have now roughly 4,000 customers collecting almost 1 billion feedbacks. So basically what we are like how our customers are getting the benefits is that like they see immediately the results. So let's say that for example, like one gas station was testing our service in 5 locations, and like in 2 weeks they noticed that, hey, like this location is the best one, and this location is not so good one. So they thought that, okay, like let's change the managers and let's see what happens. So they switched the managers, and in 1 week results went opposite. So the location which was performing like really well in customer satisfaction went like down. So yeah, it's kind of like the A/B testing tool for physical environment where we are. We have now roughly 100 employees and doing this globally, and now more and more in US as well.
What, 120 countries? Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
So let me just kind of summarize a little bit and just kind of tell you, my version of this. I just want to make sure we've explained exactly what they do. So, and you, even if you haven't heard of them, you may have seen their kiosks. They're in 49ers Stadium in San Francisco. They are in various airports in the U.S., and their presence in the U.S. is growing. But as you can see, they're all over the world in other places as well. These kiosks simply say, what was your experience like today? Or how was your service today? And they have 4 buttons. each of them is a face. There's a sad face, there's a happy face, and then there's a two in between, like a little bit sad or a little bit happy. And that's it. That's not it, but that's the basic offering, which is that consumers can tell you how they feel about you right now and right here in this specific spot by clicking a button. They don't have to give you their email address. They don't have to write a paragraph about their experience. All they do is press a button. And as a result of offering something so simple, and in some subtle ways kind of game-like, which we might have a chance to talk about as well, you guys are collecting billions of data points, right? Across many, many verticals, across many, many countries, allowing brands to understand exactly how they're doing in real time. And if you're a big thing like an airport, across all different parts of the airport, so that you can focus in on service issues. You can, when Heikki's talking about A/B testing, you can be a restaurant who changes nothing but one menu item or nothing but your prices on one night, and through the sentiment feedback that you're getting, you can A/B test that change, again, in real time. And what's very interesting to me about it, although it's such a simple idea, is that as opposed to reviews, still important, the TripAdvisor model is I need to read a bunch of reviews before I really know what I want to book for my travel, or even if I'm local, it's a high consideration activity, right? But but only about 5% of your consumers are ever going to review you. So statistically, it's pretty low. Whereas the buttons, maybe you can share, I mean, how often do people click on the buttons? It's statistically significant, right?
Yeah. So like depending on the industry, it's like roughly average 20%, but like within some industries, it can be even like 80%. So
80%.
So yeah. So
Wow.
for example, like if we think about like catering companies who are providing like lunch for employees,
Right.
So then it can be like 80% because like employees, they want to give feedback because they also want like great food next day. So
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the communication between the employees and the company who is providing the lunch. For the company who is providing the lunch, for them it's amazing because like they can optimize the cost of the food and also like how happy people are for the food.
Right.
So it's kind of like win-win situation for both parties.
So a few subtle changes to the concept of offering feedback, and it's a little bit like NPS score. You know, you feel in a kind of a competitive position with them, and but it's just different enough that it's garnered all of this data, and suddenly you've got lots of data to work with to benchmark yourself, et cetera. So back to Jason again. That sounds like the kind of thing that UPS could do. I mean, would you be a potential HappyOrNot customer, do you think?
Yeah, I could see that like at the UPS stores, obviously, where we connect and interact with consumers directly.
Or even the delivery guy. I mean, often the delivery guy doesn't actually interact with the person that they're delivering the package to.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if they have to obtain a signature or something like that, they would direct, they would have that contact. But yeah, and I was actually thinking about that if you were to do that, you would have something that would be on what we call our dyad board, right, which is what you sign for when you sign for a package, that would pop up and they would just select one of the faces or something like that, and you would get direct at the house type of feedback from that.
Right.
So.
Do you guys already do anything like that? Do you do NPS scores, or I don't remember seeing that when I interact with UPS.
Well, what we do, and I mean from like what we were talking about before, we have to constantly keep track of what consumer demands and behaviors are in the marketplace, specifically in the last 8 to 10 years, just because of the increase in e-commerce and the amount of now interaction we've got directly with consumers that we really never had in the past. So, because that essentially our mix from a volume perspective, B2B volume versus B2C volume, has completely almost inversely did a 180 from, say, 20 years ago to what it is today.
Okay.
Our residential deliveries are off the chart compared to our commercial deliveries.
Right.
So not only do we got to keep tabs on what the businesses want from us, but we also have to understand what the consumers want from those businesses. And like I said in the beginning, how do we interact between them? So about 6 years ago, we commissioned a study called UPS Pulse of the Online Shopper.
Right.
That ComScore does for us. And we've produced that every single year. And what that does is that gives us feedback from consumers directly and specific to online shopping from the complete pre-purchase all the way through to the post-purchase. Because most e-commerce companies or companies, when they go to e-commerce, they're very heavily focused on content, ease of use on the website, right? What they don't think about really is what do the consumers want in the shopping cart? They want choice, how convenient is it, and how much control do they have over the delivery when they finally get the package. And you see that disruption in the marketplace today with last mile delivery is just completely blowing up right now. You've got Uber that's in that mix.
Right.
You've got a ton of same day companies. Amazon's trying to figure that out. Post office is trying to figure that out. Our other purple competitor, I can't say their names, trying to figure that out as well. But that's a huge deal, and it's very costly. But that's kind of how we keep track of that. And then we typically share that information. That's part of our value prop to our business customers is, hey, we understand what the consumers want from you from an e-commerce perspective. Let us show you the solutions we've got to address these consumer sentiments that we've got in our study that help differentiate us in our marketplace.
So the business has shifted to B2C, but you're still in the service of the business doing the shipping as much as anything else. And also, I know that we talked about this before, that there's sometimes, the consumer doesn't really make a distinction between UPS and the business who shipped the product through UPS. So you're, I would think, highly motivated to make sure that the business feels confident that UPS understands the consumer so that they're going to choose you over the competitor.
Yeah. And one of the things, just in 2011, we launched one of our first direct consumer products or solutions called UPS My Choice, which gives that consumer the ability. It's a free member service that you can sign up for, and it gives you the ability to see anything that's coming to you via UPS, whether you ordered it or not. We just know by address matching that we've got a tracking number that's coming to your address, and we give you that notification 24 hours beforehand.
Right.
And then you've got the ability to make changes on how that package is delivered prior to the package being delivered. If you're not going to be home, if you're on vacation, you don't want to take time off of work to be there during a certain time, you don't want to come back the next day and get the little sticker that says, we came, delivered package, you weren't home, we'll try again tomorrow, trying to eliminate that. And then the other thing that we just launched in 2014 was UPS Access Points, which kind of complements My Choice, and that creates alternate delivery points that we can deliver to in the event that you're not home. And really, if you think about New York City, if you don't have a doorman in a building, we can't release the package. We always have to come back the next day. So in those situations, we've got certain algorithms that put radiuses a certain distance away from where you are, and we'll deliver it to that location and tell you, hey, we delivered it to ABC Pharmacy on your corner. You can pick it up there when you get home from work.
It's all about solving the same problem, but providing these options so consumers feel like they have a choice, or you can deliver to them when they're not home and that kind of thing. So, okay, let me now figure out, this is going to be a little bit of a jump, but for Mark now, we're talking about sentiment in ways that, again, deviate quite a lot from that sort of, consumer review site model. Do you guys feel like you're innovating within that model? Do you guys feel like you're pushing things forward in a new way that's different from Google, different from sites that people might compare you to?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of it is just getting better at the core job that we do, which is putting up highly trustworthy reviews. So we have innovated around machine learning so that we keep fraudulent reviews off the site. We know that lots of restaurants and other locations would love to boost their rating on TripAdvisor by putting up reviews. Well, those typically follow patterns that we can recognize with machine learning and just get off our site. We then have hundreds of people behind that who review any questionable reviews because we want to be the best, most credible site for that. So our innovation is around getting better at our core job, which is providing information that allows diners and travelers to have a great experience. Right? So we continue to innovate with our products as well. We want the restaurant owners to find new ways to get to that audience, to get to that diner. So we want to continue to develop products that get better and better at that. So we're looking at new ways to integrate and add within our site. People want to be found. We're looking at new ways to create branding on the site. So last year we created a premium product that allowed a restaurant to be able to say, here are the 3 reasons why you should visit my restaurant, and put that right at the top. Restaurant owners love that. They want to tell people, come to my restaurant for the great service, an amazing steak, and a dessert you won't forget, right? And attach that to reviews where people actually agreed with them and said, I had a great steak here, right? And know that that is a genuine, authentic review. Like, that's just doing what TripAdvisor has always done in a better, more interesting way that a restaurant wants, right? And that's what we're trying to do is continue to be what we are, but do it in new and more interesting ways.
If you invite the conversation about how you guys are combating review spam, you're going to have fun with that conversation, because it's a very active, as people probably know, with Google especially. There's a lot of issues with spam reviews. Yelp has its own, well-known algorithm for not recommending certain reviews that it doesn't trust, and so on. Obviously, that's all. The positive way of looking at that is that it's all in the interest of building authenticity. You want people to believe that this is an authentic consumer.
Yeah, what we know is that people look at many reviews when they're making a decision. So I think it's an average of 6 reviews for a restaurant, where people would look at a mix of good and bad. They'll look at the top reviews, they'll click on and filter on the 5 bubble reviews, and then they'll look at the worst ones too.
Right.
And they will build an opinion based on that. But when we survey our consumers, 93% say the reviews that they've read on TripAdvisor are representative of the actual experience they have when they go to a restaurant. That's what we're trying for. We're never going to be 100% accurate, but we want the good and the bad to be an accurate picture of what they're going to experience. If the service was bad in one review and the owner responded and said, that doesn't sound like our restaurant, we apologize, please come back and try us again. Owner responses are a huge value that people don't understand.
Yep.
People will ignore that review. People will say, the owner is good, that must have just been a bad server on a bad night, right? And you can counteract these things if you understand how to work with a review site. I think that's really important for people to understand, is that when you respond to reviews, you negate the problem. You mitigate that review. You tell that diner, I care enough to respond to this person and apologize and invite them back and say, please try us again. It really matters.
That's definitely the story we try to tell as well. So Heikki, an obvious statement to make about the difference between a service like TripAdvisor and a service like HappyOrNot is that TripAdvisor's main consumer of its content is other consumers who read reviews in order to make informed purchase decisions. Whereas with HappyOrNot, you guys are training your sites on giving the brand insights into what consumers think about them. So it's a little bit more of a survey model or an NPS model. However, you've got so much data, it's so up to the minute and localized in nature, and it covers so many verticals that if you wanted to, you might be able to build a killer directory. And you sort of maybe might do that one day, yes?
Yeah, thank you. So for us, it's more about like developing the for example, real-time stuff, like how we make sure that, like, for example, when our service is used at the security gates at the airports, like how we make sure that staff knows immediately if something happens, and they can react on those. They can open like new line immediately, for example. About like sharing the results, that's something like what we see more and more. Like for example, retail companies, they are doing implementations now where they are like they are showing results real time. So let's say that if 95% of the consumers were happy during the morning hours, they wanna show that like immediately.
Yeah.
So that's something what we are seeing more and more. So that it's kind of like, and it's also like when you are giving the feedback, you are also getting something back. Like you get some information about how happy other people are. And you can see that like the data is actually used. One thing what we are also like doing more and more now is that because we know we also have the benchmark data kind of like globally, but we also have the data, of course, from the specific retail company. So we can for example like send notice to our customer that, hey, tomorrow you usually have like great results during the morning hours, but in the evening hours that's always the tricky. So like kind of like sending notifications before something can happen, and then they can like do some changes on the operational level, and they can see already next day that what happened. So
Right.
so it's about like how to keep that information loop fast. Like they get the information about sales figures usually like real time, about basket sizes and so on. But about customer satisfaction, that's the data what is missing. One other area where we see also more and more action is the real-time employee satisfaction side. So we have like hundreds of companies who are using this for to measure employee satisfaction on daily level. So like how was your work day today? Like every day when you leave the office, you give the feedback. And let's say if you were not happy, you can like communicate that maybe it was because of the lot of work, or maybe because of the leadership or something else. So that the company and the HR team, they get like real-time information about how happy employees are. And like it's pretty obvious that when you have a great team and if they are like enthusiastic and happy, like they get more done. That's the rule, and the changes can happen fast.
Right.
So like we have seen situations where satisfaction has gone up fast, but also like to the opposite direction. So it's nice that people know if something is happening.
The picture that emerges if you read the article about them that I was mentioning is that these guys create like a command center that the brand can look at and see how things are changing on a minute-by-minute basis in terms of consumer sentiment. So talking about things happening quickly, it really helps you to keep the pulse on changes that are either good or bad, and help you to take action in response to that. So I wish we had time for questions. We're actually completely out of time, but the gentlemen will be here, I think, after the sessions are over. So please feel free to approach them and continue the conversation. Thank you very much.